С точки зрения, мы, конечно, готовы. Они у нас постоянно находятся в состоянии боевой готовности. Это первое. А второе, и это тоже...
We've seen the devastation in the past with the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. But the weapons of today are 3,000 times more powerful. Could this end humanity as we know it? We can look at the statistics. 1,000 humans were dying per hour between 1939 and 1945. It is, statistically speaking, the most peaceful period of human history right now. And yet there is a looming fear over our heads ever since 1945. Nuclear war, and try figure out whether we really are on the verge of nuclear war. To answer this question, I had to travel halfway around the world to where this story really begins, when the first nuclear weapon was ever used on humans, Hiroshima, Japan, one of only 2 places on the entire planet where humans have experienced the direct impact of splitting the atom. If this is the kind of destruction that was caused by a bomb dropped 80 years ago, what would happen if one of the nukes were dropped today? And that is the question we're going to answer in this video. In 1947, Albert Einstein, Robert Oppenheimer, and a number of key scientists who invented the first atomic weapon created the doomsday clock, a countdown to nuclear apocalypse. If the clock strikes midnight, it's all over. Each year, the clock is set, indicating how close the bulletin of atomic scientists believe we are to total destruction in 1947. It was set at 7 minutes to midnight. As the arms race picked up speed, the US and Russia continued to build more and more nukes. We edged closer and closer to midnight. By 1963, tensions had cooled and treaties were signed to prevent more testing. Things were looking up 12 minutes to midnight. But over time, things kept getting worse. Bigger and more powerful bombs were created. Military technology grew and tensions rose until we get to today, 90 seconds to midnight, closer than ever before in history, even closer than the height of the Cold War. As I'm sure you saw in Oppenheimer, the effects of an atomic bomb are absolutely devastating. But the bombs used by the US and Japan pale in comparison to the thermonuclear weapons used today. The key difference between the two is where the energy for the explosion actually comes from. Atomic bombs work by splitting a heavier atom into smaller atomic nuclei. This releases a huge amount of energy. Thermonuclear weapons, however, work by fusing 2 lighter atomic nuclei into a heavier one. This is how our sun releases its energy. You're essentially harnessing the power of the stars to create a weapon. A Los Alamos nuclear weapons engineer that worked on the first atomic bomb said the original atomic bombs were like school science projects in comparison to the hydrogen bombs of today. The Sababa, the biggest thermonuclear weapon ever detonated, was 3,000 times more powerful than the atomic weapon dropped on Russia, and the Tsar Bomba was dropped in 1961. The weapons of today are even more advanced and capable. But how did we get here? 1945 marks the beginning of the nuclear arms race as the US and Russia competed to see who could make the most nukes. It didn't take long for others to get involved. Britain, France, China, Israel, even South Africa for a brief period. This culminated in 1986 when the nuclear powers were at their largest. There were more than 70,000 nukes on Earth, 23,000 with the US, 40,000 with Russia, a few 100 between the other countries. As tensions cooled and treaties was signed, the number of nuclear warheads decreased over time until we get to today, the US with 3708 nuclear warheads, Russia with 4489, Britain with 225, France 290, Israel 90, Pakistan 170, India 164, China for 10, and North Korea with 30. There are 3 main ways massive nuclear warheads, that type capable of destroying entire cities, are used today. The most obvious being the classic bomber drop. Bombers are capable of flying over a target and simply dropping the thermonuclear device before flying far off into the safe distance. This is how the atomic bombs in World War II were dropped. ICBMs are a different breed entirely, and to me, unbelievably terrifying. These are intercontinental ballistic missiles with ranges greater than 5,500 kilometers. They launch from their host silos and fly across the ocean to a different continent before striking their target. All of that happens from the press of a button to detonation within 30 minutes. In fact, they don't even have to take just one warhead. Many of them contain multiple nukes attached to the end, so they can launch one missile, fly across the ocean, and strike multiple locations. Finally, we have SLBMs. These are the nuclear-capable submarine missiles. They are launched from the silos of nuclear subs, fly out of the ocean into space, use the stars to navigate, and then come back down to Earth. Before detonating, they can hit their target within 10 minutes. Think about that. Both ICBMs and SLBMs cannot recall the missiles once they are launched. 80 years ago, in an attempt to end the war, the US dropped an atomic bomb, nicknamed Little Boy. In the morning, just as families were heading to work and school, the Enola Gay approached the city of Russia. The belly of the planes opened and Little Boy, the atomic bomb, was released 600 meters above the city. The bomb was detonated. In an instant, a fireball was generated hotter than the surface of the sun. 70,000 men, women, and children were instantly killed. Think about that, 70,000 humans completely wiped from the face of the earth. In less than a second, the city was mostly made out of wood. It was entirely leveled by the firestorm that followed. Nearly every building was destroyed. The Peace Dome remained. This event drew a distinct line in the sand of humanity's timeline. The time before and after nuclear weapons, a further 50,000 people would go on to die over the next 30 days of acute radiation syndrome. And what's most terrifying for me is the bomb used in 1945 completely pales in comparison to those possessed by nuclear nations today. I mean, all of this destruction. The entire city of Hiroshima was completely flattened by the conversion of less than 1 gram of matter into energy. More than 100,000 people killed by the mass less than a butterfly. And yet right now, as you sit there watching this video, the United States has 1770 nukes deployed, ready to launch in as little as 60 seconds. Russia has 1674. This is the reality. And after researching how nuclear war works for months, I now understand how it would play out in 2024. And it terrifies me. Are you ready? Surveillance satellites, 1/10 of the way to the moon, are locked in geosynchronous orbit, meaning they orbit at the same speed Earth rotates. This allows them to effectively stay above the same place on Earth constantly. These satellites are capable of noticing the hot rocket exhaust from the ICBMs within a fraction of a second, even through the clouds. They are so powerful that they can see a single match being lit from 200 miles away. The SPIRS satellites over North Korea, China, and Russia are around the size of a metro bus. They watch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, watching for the explosive spark of a nuclear threat. Assuming the escalation to nuclear war is between the US and Russia, this is what would likely happen. As soon as either side launches a nuclear detection systems will notify officials and prompt them to launch their own counter-offensive. It's a sad strategy. If you knew me, then I'll know you, and we'll go down together. If they believe that the threat is genuine, ballistic missiles will want from us submarines off the coast of Norway and begin striking key Russian targets within 10 minutes. A few minutes later, Russian subs will have launched their own off the coast of Canada, hitting the US simultaneously. Once launched, ICBMs and nuclear subwarheads cannot be recalled. Their fate is sealed when the button is pressed. ICBMs are launched from both countries, flying across the ocean and beginning their strike on military targets, command and control centers, nuclear launch facilities, and sadly population centers. It takes 26 minutes and 40 seconds for an ICBM to be launched from Russia and arrive at the continental United States. This initial battle of nukes, all taking place in less than an hour, will kill millions of humans. But it's just the beginning. Nuclear winter is coming. Black carbon smoke is thrown up into the atmosphere from the nuclear firestorm cities today, with hundreds of times more people than a rush mile, will create much more smoke than what was experienced in Japan. 100 to 200 million tons of soot is launched into the atmosphere. This black smoke is sent up into the stratosphere above the rain clouds that would typically wash the smoke away. Here it gets heated by sunlight, floating around up there for up to a decade. The wind is so strong it will take near days for the black smoke to encase much of the northern hemisphere. As a result, Earth will be freezing cold even during the summer. Many spots around America will be more than 20 degrees cooler, with other European and Asian locations cooling by twice as much. This climate change, combined with economic impacts in countries struggling to recover from the strikes, will result in massive famine and loss of life. Over 5 billion humans on Earth would starve to death. 99% of all those in the US, Europe, Russia, and China would pass away. This is a hypothetical model. It could be better or worse, but we should all agree that no scenario with nuclear war involved will be good. So if there's any takeaway from this video, let it be this. If these are the tools that our leaders fight World War III with, humanity won't live to see World War IV.